Loading Moonstar.
More pretty soldiers that you can shake the wand at.
Downloading update. Update installed. You are now running Moonstar, a Halloween Rainbow, the Rainbow Brite special.
Welcome back to Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. I'm your host, Alex Summers, and as you can probably already tell, our first episode back is also going to be our first holiday special. Today, Chris Mayek returns as the official co-host of Moonstar, so that's exciting. And we introduce Renee Stowe of RainbowBrite.co and Britecast, the Rainbow Brite podcast. I guess I could tell you more about what's going to happen, but it's probably better if you just listen. So I'll see you in the outro. Peace. Welcome everybody back to Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. I'm here today with Renee from Britecast and RainbowBrite.co for a very rainbow Halloween.
Ooh, Halloween episode, yay!
Special. And then this is in my mind, it's like a rainbow goes across the screen, but it's all like orange and black themed. Like spooky sounds. So I just want to first, since we're starting the show, I do want to publicly thank you for doing this last minute. And I want to give you a special shout out for being so incredibly supportive from jump. Like the second I posted a Rainbow Brite image on my Instagram, which by the way, to anyone listening, for whatever my own personal reasons, it took some courage to do that because I have a lot of stuff in my head that's like, it's not for you still. And I'm trying to work through. So the fact that the first thing I posted got such a positive reaction from such a nice person, like immediately really made me happy. So I just want to say thank you and welcome to the show.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
And I think the first thing I want to touch on is just, can you talk a little bit about Britecast, just from the top of the show? I want everyone to know where that is, because that's actually, I had seen it before we spoke before. I'd seen it a couple of times. What is that?
Britecast is the Rainbow Brite podcast. The website is thebritecast.com. It is a Rainbow Brite podcast that I do with Katie Carty-Haley from rainbowbrite.net. Since I work with the rainbowbrite.co website domain, which includes the Rainbow Brite forums, which is an old message board, and hold on, I lost my thought.
The Rainbow Brite forums and Britecast.
And Britecast. And she works with oh god, I just lost my thought again.
That's okay.
And do you cut this stuff up?
Yeah, I'll go through and check some of this out.
Because I had a thought and it just went, whee!
Sometimes I leave moments like this in though, because people can relate, because you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, I lose my train of thought every 2 seconds. I get it.
I feel so ADD.
Well, let me ask you the question again.
Okay, let's try that.
So I was just saying like how thrilled I was to get such an immediate positive response from you. And for me too, like you run the Britecast, you're already someone who is established in the world of Rainbow Brite. So I just want you to tell us a little bit about Britecast, about your website.
Okay. All right. So with Britecast, Britecast is the Rainbow Brite podcast, which is thebritecast.com. I started that in 2013 along with Katie Carty Hiley from rainbowbrite.net. Katie is one of the oldest Rainbow Brite websites on the net, having started all the way back in 1997.
Wow.
The rainbowbrite.co, which was originally Co UK, which everything is still there, by the way, has the Rainbow Brite forums, which is an archive of the old message boards, as well as a current board that you can meet and greet at. But nobody uses message boards anymore. Everyone wants to use Facebook. But before Facebook and other social media, there was the forums. So she has the oldest Rainbow Brite dedicated website.
Mhm.
And so she's definitely an aficionado on the Rainbow Brite phenomenon as it is, because it was the first website anyone usually found back, in the 90s and the early 2000s when trying to find the brand.
Yeah.
Her website was where you would go to find out, character names, and she had a coloring book page set up, and all this other information.
Maybe to check what VHS tapes are in existence, so you're making sure you're
Exactly.
getting them all. I don't know.
Yep. And then I came along in 2008 with rainbowbrite.co.uk, which is actually from Sunspire, who was just holding that for the forums, which was the message board that we would use. In 2008, I decided to branch on that and focus on international products and things that were released internationally, as well as in the United States. So we wanted to be able to meet in the middle and actually start a discussion about having, of what was going on in the fandom, which, at this time there wasn't really much. In 2009 was going to be a re-release, but it wasn't until 2013 that we actually recorded our first episode and put that on the net. And that went on until 2017, where it went on. I'm hoping to be a temporary hiatus. But,
I hope so too. It's a really fun show. And the last episode, because I purposefully listened to the first one and the last one in the short amount of time I had before talking to you. I left out the middle chunk because I want to learn stuff organically from you in this moment, but you start out by doing the recaps, and you end the show with this great interview with Kaliko, who developed a Rainbow Brite video game decades after this technology is, not the norm anymore, right? So there's an interesting wide range of stuff to find on Britecast. What was it like when you started to get interviews with people affiliated directly with Rainbow Brite or projects about Rainbow Brite?
Well, when I first started dedicating the website, which was rainbowbrite.co.uk, which is now rainbowbrite.co. But like I said, both sites are still there because I am working on relaunching and updating the site because it hasn't been updated in quite some time. But when I first started out, this was back in 2008, there wasn't a lot of social media around at that time. So my first contact was Bettina Bush. Bettina Bush is the voice of Rainbow Brite. She's very open to fans and is still a very active voice actress, as well as currently she runs a working mom media. I don't know if it's a magazine or if it's just a podcast. I'm not quite sure. But at the time she was doing music.
Oh, cool.
And you could message her through her website. And when I did that, I asked her if she knew who the other actors' agents might be. Because usually to get in touch with a celebrity, if you go through their representation, their management, their agents, you'll get a better response. So luckily, two of the actors from the show still use the same management at the time. And that would have been, I want to say, Pat Fraley, who was Buddy Blue and Lurky, and Scott Menville, who played Brian. And of course, she and Scott, they still work together sometimes on, I believe it's Ben 10, and I think they also did an episode of Teen Titans Go.
That's kind of fun.
So what I did is I did pretty much a form letter explaining who I was and what I wanted to do, and pretty much sent the same interview questions to everybody. Snail mail.
Right.
Snail mail. If I didn't have the agent's name, I actually went on Google and searched for voice actor representation and what persons I could get a hold of. And again, I had a big envelope. I had the letter inside. I had a self-addressed return envelope with postage already on it inside that. And I mailed that to the different agents. Now, I've had a few of them returned in the past. Like the one that was always returned was Peter Cullen.
He played?
That was Murky Dismal.
Oh.
And the Monstro Merc, also known as Optimus Prime in the Transformers community. But unfortunately, I could never seem to get the correct contact for him. So all his stuff always got sent back. And even though things got sent out, this was the funny part. Some of my interviews did not get replied to for years because they got misplaced. But they are so great to actually get back. That would have been Mona Marshall. The first one I got back was Pat Fraley. He got my questions. He replied to everything via email.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second one was Mona Marshall. She had misplaced her. She actually wrote back, had a cute little hand-drawn little where she wrote out every answer, and it was so cute. She puts these little ivy and stuff around her name. It's so cute. And I had asked for at the time a headshot. I wanted a modern headshot, and if she had an older one, an older headshot. So she sent me one from the 80s. So I wanted one as a reference of what she would have looked like then. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, what she looks like now. She, of course, now does South Park characters. That's what she's really known for is, for example, she's Kaya Slofsky's mom on South Park.
Oh, yeah, everyone, yeah.
Other female characters on South Park. She also does lots of anime. She's it does Digimon, and I remember I caught her voice. I have a weird talent. I can hear someone's voice and I can tell you who they are in the mm-hmm. case of actors. So when I watch anime, I can sometimes catch her.
She does Izzy for Digimon, right?
Mm-hmm. And
I can always catch her too. It's very distinctive.
I watched an anime called Love Hina.
I haven't seen that one.
It's cute, where it's a boy that has to stay in a bathhouse with a bunch of girls. Mm-hmm. And she plays one of the women there, but it's funny because the character is a warrior. She has like a samurai sword and is very stoic, and so it was very fascinating to have that. And but then there was Scott Menville. Scott Menville, he replied about 2 years after that, 2 or 3 years after that, where he had gotten the letter and then misplaced it. And he was a good one. He actually scanned my questions in, retyped them so that he could type all the answers in there, printed that back out, and mailed me that.
That's amazing. That's really good.
I was like, oh yeah, you're tech savvy. All right.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like with Britecast, not only did you get these opportunities to like interview these amazing people, but you really learned how that whole system works. Where if you want to get a hold of someone, like you learn kind of the people you need to look for, how to go after it. Would you say that today a lot of those rules probably are still the same?
A lot of them are. And a lot of what I learned was actually things that I learned from my dad.
Oh, that's
My
cool.
dad did advertising. He he was independent advertising company in North Georgia from 1980s on, and he basically told me, if you want to find out where anything is made, you go to the source. And so, for example, if I wanted to know about a toy, you go to the production company or even the designers. And then in the case of acting, you don't go directly to the actor, you go to the agent. And
Yeah.
Unless you can do conventions where it takes out the middleman and you can meet someone face to face.
That's true. Conventions, when you were doing this before, there were conventions and stuff too, but
yes,
also with that, it's more of a mixed bag, right? Like you have to know who's going to be where and make sure you're in the right place at the right time. And that sounds like a lot harder to pull off.
The interviews that I've mentioned currently are not for Britecast. These were for my website, rainbowbrite.co. But it was establishing those connections, which is how I got to do request interviews for the podcast, because I made those connections prior.
Moonstar, the Sailor Moon podcast will be right back. Welcome back to a very Halloween Rainbow with special guest Renee Stowe.
The Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer feature film has a basic plot point that there is a planet called Spectra where all the light in the universe passes through, and it's what gives life to the universe. And it is being threatened by a greedy princess who wants to keep it just for herself. So the residents, or specifically Orin, a wise old sprite, sends his robotic horse to Rainbow Land to bring Rainbow Brite to rescue Spectra from this, what is known as the Dark Princess. So that's
what does she want with Spectra?
What does she want with Spectra?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason that the Dark Princess wants Spectra is because she loves shiny jewels. She wants all the jewels, all the diamonds, and Spectra is the largest diamond in the universe. It's an entire planet.
And we could equate Spectra to like kind of like the sun in our world a little.
Well, yeah, it's actually they put the sun over Spectra in a few transitions actually in the movie. So you could say it is represented by the sun, but it does not say that it's the sun specifically.
But what I mean is the whole idea of, if Spectra is covered up or gone, all of the light in the universe also is gone, right? Isn't that
Correct.
the idea?
Yes.
So like if we lost our sun,
yes,
we would be in the similar position.
Well, specifically, the Spectrum sprites are being hypnotized by glitter bots, that are an invention. Well, I don't think they're not invented by the Dark Princess. They're at least powered by and controlled by the Dark Princess, because their heads are these crystals.
I would imagine they were invented by probably like her army henchmen or something.
I'm thinking Count Blog, who is her second hand.
That guy who's, I know who you're talking about, with the green. He's like, I always think of him as the advisor or something.
Yeah. because also he's the one that was in charge of building her spaceship.
Oh, that's right. Because and we know because we've seen the show, but people who haven't, I consider it the finale episode just because it makes the most sense in my like cinematically to end it here. But Queen of the Sprites, the episode of the show where you see this character again, and Rainbow Brite defeats her again. Isn't that not the final episode?
Yes, it is. It is the
It is
final
technically.
episode.
Okay, I had a point for bringing that up, but now I can't remember. Well,
All right, so in between going to Spectra to rescue it, Rainbow leaves behind Twink, all of this with the color kids and the sprites, and leaves to follow Onyx, the robotic horse that Orin sent to Spectra. And on her way there, she meets Chris when she gets there, who is a kind of a warrior in training. He's the one that Orin has been training to defend Spectra. And he is resentful that Orin sent a girl to help him.
Yes.
which is somewhat sad because it's kind of sexist, but it
I'm actually really glad it's in the movie, to be honest. If you can I tell you why?
Okay.
Go ahead. Well, because being of someone like we are, we remember what it was like. Most of the world really doesn't. And I think if it's not preserved in media in some way, it will disappear, and it has to be preserved somehow. And I think it's a really great reflection of the time and the fact that that is one of the reasons why this show was so important for a lot of people back then, because that whole idea of girls aren't good enough, girls can't do what boys can do was still really prevalent when this show was being made. And it was an active like punch against that mentality by including it in this, I think.
Well, behind the scenes trivia wise, this is from pardon me. The development of the movie, and in my research with the behind the scenes and researching about the movie's development, Chris was actually originally designed to be Rainbow Brite's cousin.
Oh, interesting. It kind of makes sense.
If you see the press kit, Chris has a star on his cheek, just like Rainbow Brite does, but it's not in the film. So, but yeah, that's because originally there was supposed to be a familial relation between the two, but it's not brought up that there's any familiar relation. But they have that bratty brother sister kind of
relationship.
Yeah, that's what it's like to me. Yeah, and see, I had an older sibling. Okay, and my older sister, yeah, she didn't care for me that much.
So you can relate to it would be kind of like you showing up as Rainbow, and she would have been like, "Oh, great, you."
Yeah.
That's funny. To me, it was, but I don't know. I don't know if it would have lost anything if they were related. I don't know why they dropped that. That's interesting.
There's a lot of things behind the scenes of the making of the movie that were developed, even the show itself, that were in development that either got changed or rewritten. Like for originally the Dark Princess, who is young with this spunky hair and looks like she just walked out of a Pat Benatar video.
Exactly that, yes.
Was supposed to be an old hag.
I don't think it would have been as interesting.
Her name was it's Empress Hysteria. And she was an old hag. No. Hello?
Oh, there we go. So what was her name supposed to be?
Empress Hysteria.
Dysteria?
Hysteria.
Oh, Hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
Empress Hysteria, and she was supposed to be an old hag. For people who haven't seen the design for the evil princess, I want you guys to pause this and Google it or go look real quick so you can see. And then imagine that being replaced by, how would you describe? Do you have any, like, were there any visuals for her?
Yes. I actually, Hallmark used to have a Facebook page for Rainbow Brite. And I did archive on my Instagram whenever they would post new pictures from behind the scenes. And one of them is a sketch of Empress Hysteria.
Okay, so that's on your website then.
It's on Instagram. If you
it's on Instagram.
Yeah, Rainbow Brite Co. Instagram. I do have it there. There's also a portrait of the Dark Princess, of course, as we know her, is also there. The Empress Hysteria is just a sketch.
Empress Hysteria is just that's as far as she got before they changed the design, is why.
Correct.
That's interesting. Regarding this movie, can you take us back to, because just so the listeners know, did you experience this in theaters, correct?
Yes, I did.
What was that like?
Well, it was winter of 1985. I had actually just moved from Southern California to Georgia, and that summer. And my dad, my dad knew I loved Rainbow Brite. He had sent me my Rainbow Brite doll for my 5th birthday that year. And they had promotional comic books that they were giving out for the movie. That was the Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer DC comic.
Have you seen a physical copy since?
I have them.
Oh my gosh, that is cool. Okay, keep going.
Okay. My original comic unfortunately got destroyed in a move when I was about 13. But I have since repurchased the comic, and so yes, I still have a copy of the comic. So we knew that the movie was going to be airing at the movie theater because I remember they had a trailer for it. I want to say it was before the Santa Claus the movie, because that was airing in the same theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really excited to see it. And I remember going in and sitting in the seat, but of course the seat just seemed too low, so I'd flip the bottom of the seat up to sit on top of it, so I could see above everyone. Because I was
How old
5.
were you at the time?
I was 5 years old. I was 5. And then of course then you have to wait through all of the trailers
that you don't care about at 5.
Nope, don't care about it at 5.
You're like, what
I want was my Rainbow Brite. And I remember it came on, and it was like, for me as a kid, it was like everything else just sort of disappeared. And I was like sitting in front of my own little TV set, and your eyes are just as big as saucers. And it's just like, and it was amazing for me because there was so much more color in the movie than was in the animated show. It definitely was bigger. It was bigger overall. And I actually went and saw it, I want to say twice. I saw it twice. And then
did you go with your dad both times?
Yes, I had to. I was 5.
Oh, I mean, maybe a friend's family was like, let's take, I don't know.
I had actually, because I had just moved.
That's right. Summer. You were new in the area.
Yeah, okay. I was new. My dad, because he did advertising for the movie theater, would get passes.
Oh, that's cool.
So I would see all the new movies. But specifically that year, it was me, my mom, my sister, and my dad, and we went for a double feature.
can you describe what the movie theater was like? Do you remember? Because
Mhm.
they've changed a lot.
The movie theater, actually, it's funny that you should say that. The movie theater that I remember watching it in is now a grocery store.
Oh, well.
Yeah, the building technically is still there, but the movie theater moved and they turned the old building into a grocery store later. Exactly how they did that, I don't know. I've never been in it. But I remember it had the bulbed lights that would come out from the marquee. And then, of course, the actual sign at the end of the road, of course, that had all of the titles on it. And you had the box office, and then over to one side was claw machines and arcade games.
Right. That they still do that, I think.
Yeah. And so you'd go in, and there wasn't that many screens because this was a small theater. I think that there was like 4, so that's why I think that they
would do the double features and
yeah,
stuff.
they would do the double features. And it wasn't that you paid one price and you got 2 movies. That's not what it was. It was just they would stagger which ones that they would play throughout the day. Again, I would definitely know more specifically. And again, I can't stress this enough for anyone that wants to get a good idea about anything that you're looking for and the time period that it happened. Go to your local library, and they have the newspapers on film, and you can actually scroll through and look at the movie listings.
And if anyone who's listening has ever seen the show Supernatural or watched Netflix for 3 seconds and seen one of their 8 billion documentaries, it's that stuff where they're trying to find something, so they go to the library and they're scrolling on looking at this tiny little thing and it blows it up really big and you can see. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
From the movies. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and anyone can do that. You can just
Yes.
go and do it. You can just say, hey, I want this. And you've done it before yourself?
Yes.
Was it kind of the first time you did it, were you like, I feel kind of like a badass doing this. This is cool.
Well, the first thing that I did, since it was my first time, is I had to be told how to use the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of libraries are actually digitizing their film. That's why you have on Google, there's actually a newspaper search.
Oh, cool.
Which it'll search for things that were scanned in from a specific library. But the seeing it on the film and getting a photocopy of it, it's gonna look terrible. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. It's gonna look bad.
All of this stuff you're teaching me is so fascinating. I thought that because I was getting back into this fandom again, I go through phases and stuff, and I've watched the episodes several times, but I never realized like how much there actually is to it. There's a lot, like if you really want to dig in. And
are you talking specifically about Rainbow?
Yeah, like because there's all the dolls and the different shows, and they translate it into all these different languages and stuff.
Then there's the animation teams. Specifically, Rainbow Brite the movie was animated in several different locations, each team working on a different part. And they were able to get the entire film done in a short amount of time by doing this. Because I think they had a team in France, they had a team in, I don't know if it was Korea or Japan.
Chris was saying Japan. He said a lot of the animation was done in Japan. He was looking.
Well, specifically for Deke, but the movie was done by Warner Brothers.
Oh.
So they had a bigger budget and more access. Now they still had the same animation team evolved from the TV show. So it did include, but for example, there is oh goodness. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look right now on my Instagram because I remember I put it there. Here it is. Bernard Dryers Drieres was was the head of animation, but he also worked on other Deke shows. People, because for example, I usually see his name when it comes up with the Ulysses 31 or a lot of older Deke animation. So they did keep a lot of the team from the TV show, but when it came to the actual animation, it was broken up into teams because some of it was filmed animated in the States, some of it was animated over here. And because I remember specifically they were marveling about how quickly it was animated, because it was animated in less than a year.
Which Chris brought that up too, and I was wondering why. Like, was it being rushed, or was it just like that's just how it turned out to be that quick, or whatever? I
believe personally it's because they were trying to take the show into syndication, because the first few episodes were specials. The first 3, because you had Peril in the Pits and Mighty Monster Merc Madness, which were written by Woody Kling. And then you had Howard R. Cohen, who did Beginning of Rainbow Land, the movie, and basically wrote the outlines for all of the other ones since. Now, this is making me bring up the lost Rainbow Brite episode.
Yes.
Rainbow Brite visar sig ibland, var det på en tur till regnbågens land.
Star return to the moment.
Rainbow Brite, pays de lumière, où les petits lutins vivent comme des rois. Rainbow Brite, loin de notre terre, on peut voir Blondine.
Now, the lost Rainbow Brite episode was discussed in Britecast.
I listened to that, so I'm gonna, for the sake of the audience, ask questions.
Okay, sure. All right, so the lost episode is called Journey to the Source, and it was outlined, I think, 2 or 3 different times, which the plot would have picked up where the movie left off.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's centered around the source of all color. And it was, to me, a way that the plot was trying to take the power or the energy of color away from the actual color crystals and make it a more renewable source.
So she didn't have to rely on that all the time.
So she didn't have to rely on color crystals, because the way that it was written, it talks about at the end of the episode that it was supposed to recharge the color belt. It was either the color belt. Okay, you understand? I haven't read this read through in.
I know on Britecast you said the color belt.
It was supposed to recharge the color belt so that it wouldn't have to be recharged again for years and years. Because if you've watched the Star Stealer film, that belt loses power.
It does quickly.
Worse than a game controller.
It really does. It's like, I would have to say it takes her a handful of Star Sprinkles. If you want to give it gas mileage, it's like 10 to 15 miles per gallon on that thing. It's really not good.
It's bad. So Journey to the Source was supposed to be a way of being able to do that, or recharge the color belt and add more mythos and stuff to the Rainbow Brite franchise, including the introduction of Baby Brite,
which we see Baby Brite
Rainbow Land.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of it, right?
It's like they took the Journey to the Source idea, crumpled it up and said, okay, let's try something else. They just tossed it out the window completely, and they wrote Beginning of Rainbow Land, which had nothing. Instead of it being a continuation of the movie, it became a prequel to everything.
Which I am kind of glad they gave us a prequel, but I don't love that we had to sacrifice that other story for the prequel. Does that make sense?
Well, also because it was a different writer doing it, he also did not take into consideration what had already been written.
I don't love that either because it's like, I think it was a product of the time a little bit though, where
Yeah,
communication's not as easy.
I'm one of those strange children where I was able to catch continuity and I could catch when things didn't line up. And it's like you can't expect your audience just to look it over because they're kids. They're going to be kids like me and God knows however many others that got bugged by this. The fact that they, well, what about how
did that and what about this and why not that?
Yeah.
And the thing about, as much as I love Rainbow Brite, why I would love to see it, if they were going to do like a reboot, I would want them to keep it as close to the original as possible and just kind of like polish it up a little bit and then give it some more episodes. But I don't think it needs to be changed a lot. So you are a newer Sailor Moon fan probably than me, but can you tell us how you got into it?
Sure. I appreciated the art originally. I first got some Sailor Moon toys and things in the early 2000s, because they were going to Big Lots and to KB toy store outlets, and they were just it was leftover stuff from the Fox Kids days, and I liked the art and I thought it was very pretty, and so I picked up the VHS tapes and things, but I never watched them. And then when I got into voice acting, or my attempt to do voice acting, my friend wanted to do a dub of a Sailor Moon episode, and there was already a reference to Sailor Moon, to Rainbow Brite on the Rainbow Brite forums from several members, specifically Joey. Joey Angel, that was her screen name. She had fan fiction, which was similar to Sailor Moon style, and she said that they blended well. But apart from the episode that I attempted to assist in dubbing, I didn't really know much about the story. Then my roommate, when I was living in Florida, was a really big Sailor Moon fan. And so during COVID, it's one of those things where we started showing each other what we liked. And I go, well, I actually want to watch this because Sailor Moon Crystal and everything was coming out and they were redubbing the original Deke dub. And I said, okay, which one should I start with? And she goes, let's start with the Deke and then watch the Viz, and then, move on from there. So I watched the original butchered Deke dub. And in between, it was funny. We would watch an episode in the original Japanese with the original titles and everything. Then we'd watch what Deke did to it.
That is so funny.
And then we'd watch the new one and be like, huh, okay, all right, huh. Because you saw certain things like where they edited or they censored,
where they would,
they
would mark out, like if she's in the bath, they have to like hide certain things, or if I don't know if you noticed, but they added little effects behind them in certain areas and stuff. I think your experience with it is so vastly different from what most of us listening here probably had, because we grew up watching the Deke dub on TV, and then now we're experiencing the redub, which is, so it's really fast. What do you like the best? What version of it? No wrong answers. Everyone have your opinions.
Well, because I was so familiar with my friend's imitation of the original Usagi or Serena. I was so familiar with her portrayal that I kind of really lean towards that. The newest redub, I don't care for. The Sailor Moon's voice is too low.
You're talking about, so you lean towards the Deke version, even though they butchered it a little bit.
Well, we're talking about voice that matches the character.
Yes, not necessarily all their creative choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
The voice to me that matches the character the most is the original Usagi, or the original Serena from the Deke dub.
I have to agree. Terry Hawks, yeah.
I prefer her performance. The other one later talked through her nose too often, and the one that they ended up going through with the Viz dub, her voice is too low.
My issue with the Viz dub was that a lot of the characters sound very similar to each other too, in a way that when you watch the Deke dub, good or bad, each character's voice was very unique for each character.
Yeah, after a while you get, unfortunately, when you get generic anime girl number 2 and generic anime girl number 3, and it just,
that's what I think it's suffering from in the redub. I'm not hating on it because I've always wanted them to redub it. It's sort of like a thing I wished for, and then it came true, and I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know if I love this, but.
Well, there were certain things also. For example, the character in the original, which was supposed to be male, and they made it female because of the relationship later.
Zoe Sight, you're talking about.
Sight,
yes, yeah. Those kind of choices were a product of the time. And it's so funny because I think a lot of people will look back at that now from my community, like the LGBT community, and be like, oh, that's so bad, horrible. But no, again, same thing, like with Rainbow Brite. I am glad it's there, because if it wasn't there, we wouldn't have a record that was, they had to do that to get it on TV in America. And that is proof that life was that way at that time, to me. And I can kind of, I've heard from people who have interviewed voice actors who worked on the show and stuff, that like behind the scenes, everyone was like kind of on the, it was sort of like a network thing. Does that make sense? Like they had to do it to get the network to approve it. That doesn't mean that everyone who worked on the project was like in love with that they had to censor it.
And if I'm not mistaken, a majority of the Deke actors are Canadian.
Yes, you can hear it in the show. That's what I was going to say. My angle at this, though, is I think there are probably a lot more adults like us who either are into Rainbow Brite or would be if they knew about it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that I want to help normalize people our age being into stuff like this, because to me, it's no different than a man who has a wall full of jerseys who thinks if he dresses up in the appropriate outfit and watches his team play, that he's somehow helping them win because he has a blue pair of shorts on. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't see that as any less or better than us being like very into Rainbow Brite or Sailor Moon or whatever it is, you know?
To me, one of the reasons that I love Rainbow Brite is because I love rainbows. And rainbows themselves, when you look at a spectral pattern, the rainbow itself, it has a calming effect. Specifically on me. On me. I used to play with a little crystal and in a corner and just let the light go through it, and with the rainbows on the wall, and I would do that for hours.
I don't know if you ever listened to like New Age healing inner child or anything, but they talk about the healing powers of rainbows a lot, like and all of that. And I think it, like you were saying, it's the something about seeing the whole spectrum of color, because I think within a rainbow there's a lot of colors that we can't even perceive, probably too. Something about that is inherently good for us. Tell me, just from your perspective, you came into this with Rainbow Brite first, Sailor Moon second.
Yes.
So from that perspective, how do you see the two comparing to each other and all of that?
I love the fact that the Sailor Scouts is all represented by a color, the same way the color kids are. The only difference being that Usagi's colors are more pink and less spectrum, unless she's in, was it Sailor Princess Serenity? where it adds more of the rainbow to it. But then you also have Beryl, which is practically, the Dark Princess incarnate, with her
Very similar, yeah.
Yeah, the hair, the staff, the jewel on the, it's very, very much
The obsession with collecting. It's energy
Yes.
for Beryl, it's diamonds and whatever
Mhm.
for the princess.
the dark crystal. Have to find the silver crystal. Need the silver crystal.
That whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then so there are lots of parallels there, but of course Sailor Moon deals with a more mature, more darker subject matter, with it first of all being a romance, which is not really something you see in Rainbow Brite, apart from a kiss on the cheek that Rainbow gives Brian. And there's the flirting between Red and Lala, but it's never really it's not like overly romantic. It's
never the focus.
it's never it's never the real focus of it. Even later on with the movie when it came to Chris, but that's because personally, like I've ranted and raved forever. I don't like mature subject matters with my kids' cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
But for Sailor Moon is more for a teenage audience. I mean, Usagi's 13, 14 years old. Rainbow Brite herself is, to me, a timeless character embodied in that of a child, or just a childlike character. I mean, her stature means nothing. She's very mature, very focused, very much a leader, and but you do get to see her vulnerability, but Usagi's crybaby. So
She is, yeah.
There's some major differences when you compare the stories themselves, but visually there are certain things that mirror, such as the characters or the Sailor Scouts personalities versus the Color Kids personalities based on their colors. So you don't have a purple, and not in the main group.
No, we have Saturn is purple in
Yeah.
Sailor Moon, but she's a unique situation because she can destroy everything.
Yeah, but for example, Saturn, not Saturn. Yeah,
Indigo?
No, I was thinking of Shy Violet
Shy Violet.
and Mercury.
Mm-hmm. They're very similar.
Yeah. And then you have Red, Red and Mars, because that fiery.
I actually do think they're similar too, because out of all of the Color Kids, from what I remember, I see Red having probably the most interaction with Rainbow. And doesn't she say at one point to him, like, he's the most dependable or something like that, or she always needs him or something?
Yes, that's in Monster Merc.
And then that's when Brian says, that's why my favorite color is red, or now I know why my favorite, right? Because
Yes.
I think he was
Yes.
trying to allude to the idea that, like, because he maybe has like he wants Rainbow Brite to think he's cool, I guess we'll say, right?
Well, he wants to be, and that's one reason why he wanted to be involved. The
Mhm.
way, because we're specifically talking about Monster Merc, where at the beginning of the episode, Rainbow wants to help him. He doesn't want her help. Yet when she runs away to help Rainbow Land, he wants to go help her. And so it's like a role reversal flip. So he wants to be involved. And in a way, it's like he's getting a taste of his own medicine in the fact that he turned her away earlier.
Right.
And then, of course, when and at the end of part 1, when Rainbow gets captured, and it's pretty much he thinks it's his fault. and it's sad. But then he and Red end up having to work together, and Rainbow ends up rescuing them both. I love it.
Of course. Is there any parallel that could be drawn, do you think, with Brian to Sailor Moon? That's a tough one to me.
Well, see, Brian is the outsider. He's supposed to represent us as Earthlings, getting a glimpse into this world of magic. And in Sailor Moon, there really isn't somebody outside of their magic. I mean, the closest you could probably get is Nare, but they ended up giving up on her after like a few episodes.
True. And I guess you could say actually the audience would be Brian with Sailor Moon, because we as the audience are looking in. Brian and his family are almost like an animated audience to this magical world. Then we get to see all of that, which is, I talked about that with Chris. One of my favorite things about Rainbow Brite is that they do that, where we get to see this magical world that in how it influences where we live, which is Earth. And the fact that even in this cartoon, they're saying, oh, hey, you see all this magic? This is over here, and here you are. And when you're a kid, that to me, that created this mystical idea of maybe it's real. You know what I mean? Because, well, I'm like Brian, but I just haven't seen Rainbow yet. Or at least when you're young, you can kind of, play with the fantasy of that a little bit.
Yeah.
Would you say that, do you think Sailor Moon was influenced at all by Rainbow Brite?
It's possible. I don't know parallel wise if it had any influence, because even though it was animated over in Japan, it wasn't aired there until the 90s.
So it would probably not make sense that she would have seen it.
No, unless she was somehow influenced or got it with someone from the animation team. So when it comes to storyline, I think it's mostly coincidence.
What about the character design? Because if you compare Rainbow Brite's outfit to Sailor Moon, like the Sailor Senshi classic outfit, especially when the Sailor Scouts have the taller boots on it, there are actually quite a lot of similarities between the designs.
There are the similarities. However, when you look at the outfit versus Usagi's school outfit, it's not really too much of a stretch of what she wears every day. It's just shorter. And it's funny that you should mention that, because when I dressed up as Rainbow Brite and went to Disney World, someone thought I was Sailor Moon.
Yeah, because that's the blonde magical girl.
Yeah, no, not Sailor Moon. Wrong magical girl. There's also another character that's outside of Sailor Moon that is often referenced as being influenced by Rainbow Brite, and that's Mega Man.
I can see that, especially with Chris.
That specifically, Chris and Mega Man. There have been comparison of which one came first. Chris came first. Mega Man came second.
I mean, I like Chris better because he has rainbows on him, but no, that I immediately, when I was watching that, I was thinking about Mega Man. I was like, he could easily be in a video game too. Part of the fun experience when you're going to a video rental store is like, that is what catches your eye. That's why you end up renting it in the first place. That was how I found it, was because of the box art on the VHS tapes. Before we wrap up everything, because I just thought of this, what was your very first, what was the moment where Rainbow Brite got you? Do you remember? Like when you were like,
well, my grandparents, my mom, my aunt, my uncles, everything, they gave me coloring books and puzzles. And I watched Peril in the Pits on a little bitty black and white TV that my grandparents had given my mom. So I didn't even watch it in
black
color.
And white.
Yes, I saw it in black and white. Yep.
And even with black and white, you were like, I love this.
It was a combination of the sound. I love the chiming of the almost like crystals, and I love that sound. And then I already knew technically what the colors were because of course I had the puzzles and everything. And watching it in black and white wasn't really it's just, you know, different shades of gray, but I could still see the sparkles. I could, you know,
you can kind of visually imagine what it would be. Yeah.
And then of course later I did see them all in color. But the first time I saw it was black and white.
I'm excited because we're not going to talk too much about it here, but for the upcoming project I want to do involving Rainbow Brite, I'm glad that I met you. I think that we'll have a lot of fun chatting about it. You definitely already gave me a lot of resources that I didn't even have to ask. It was just like, hey, here, and this will help you. And that is not, I'm stressing it because that is not common in this world. It's really not.
With Katie, I always say that I have a hard time because she calls me, well, Kenny calls me Rainbow Brite Google. Katie calls me Hermione. And I'm sitting here trying not to be Sheldon Cooper.
I think Sheldon is probably a combination of all three, I would say, is the most accurate. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But I loved listening to the 2 episodes I did get to hear on the Britecast, and I can't wait to go hear more. I do DoorDash and Uber Eats deliveries, and I'm not even lying. I saved most of them for that because I'm like, I need something fun to listen to while I'm doing this. But it sounds like, from what I can gather, you really know your stuff. So if there's anybody, if we want to ask anyone about Rainbow Brite and know that we're either going to get the correct knowledge or you're going to know where to find it, or if it exists, you're kind of the one to go to.
I appreciate that.
Yes, and it's great for me that you just sort of like fell into my lap from me posting this one image on Instagram, you know.
I try to help anybody if they bring up something about Rainbow Brite, other podcasts. You know, I do try to share what I can. I don't like personally saying, oh yeah, I know everything, because I don't want to be the one to suddenly put my foot in my mouth if there's something I don't know. You
got to be humble, and that's why you got to let us be the ones to say it about you. But it is, I mean, I think nobody knows everything, but if you're pretty damn close, and if you don't know it already, you know the steps to finding legitimate information. And I absolutely love that. So I'm excited to do more with you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Is there anything else that you would want to include in just kind of your introduction to my audience? This would be like a good time for that.
Well, I personally, I don't really have anything to plug right now because, like I said, everything is up in the air with me. Mm-hmm. I may, and I know I'm working on getting things up and ready, but I'm not ready to say, oh yes, come look at this, because there ain't nothing there to look at yet.
What would you say, where can people follow you and hit the like notification thing so that when those things do pop off, because I know they're going to see it, like what is the best place for that?
I'm most active on my Instagram, which is Rainbow Brite Co. I've been trying to get Rainbow Brite Co. on Twitter, mm-hmm. But when I originally registered, I was using the UK domain, and I didn't use the co, and then somebody went and got the co and then abandoned it 10 years ago, like 12 years ago now.
So it's just
and I've been fighting with Twitter to hand over this defunct account, but Twitter's in their own universe right now.
They don't.
But no,
I don't even mess with them. So Instagram is Rainbow Brite Co. Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel. It's also Rainbow Brite Co.
Okay.
Which is Rainbow and then BRITECO. On rainbowbrite.co.uk, you can find a wonderful archive of coloring pages, music. I have the theme songs from like every version of the Rainbow Brite show I can find. I have it in Arabic, French, German, Spanish. Do I have it in Spanish? No, I don't have it in Spanish. Never mind. I have it in Swedish.
You have the French instrumental version.
Yes.
We might hear that on the podcast. I think I'm going to sneak it on here and then hope they don't hate me. I don't know. Is that dangerous? Like,
No.
I was going to say, like, I don't know how much they care about something like that. So, yeah, we're going to throw that in.
And then, then you have the Rainbow Brite wiki, where I've tried to archive all the information about the characters and history. And again, a lot of this stuff is kind of out of date, but I am still active. Again, mostly on Instagram, which right now I am over there sharing all the wonderful Halloween costumes from trick or treating.
Are you part of any of the Rainbow Brite Facebook groups or anything?
I think I'm on 2 of like a trading groups, but that's mostly to see, because usually like rare items will show up there that don't show up on eBay. And I like to see custom work and stuff that people do, but I'm not really active on there now.
Oh, because I joined a few recently and I just saw a lot of Halloween costumes this year. I was surprised how many there were. So I love that we still get to see rainbow Halloween representation out there for sure.
Oh yeah, if you go to my Instagram, at the top of the page I have an archive of different highlights, and so from the last, I want to say 4 years, I have Halloween costumes from each year, and where I've shared it to a story so that you can look at all of them in the stories. And so there are hundreds up there. And so
the website really is impressive, you guys. Like, as someone who has been a fan of this since I was a kid, it's something that, like, if I had found this when I was 10 or 12 years old, you wouldn't have seen me for 5 days. Like, I would just be, I'm not even joking. We took a break earlier and I almost forgot to come back. Like, because I was reading about the Rainbow Brite comic book. There's a Rainbow Brite comic book, y'all. All right, we got to end the show there. Renee and I talked for a long time, and it was such a fun experience getting to meet somebody who is so interested in 2 of my special interests as well. And I cannot wait to do more projects with her in the future. I hope you guys will definitely go and check out her website. Go and support her. Please make sure you hit the donate button on her website. It should say buy me a cupcake above it. When you do stuff like this, these kind of podcasts, when you run websites like this, no one is paying us to do it. We understand that we're doing something that is niche and caters to a smaller fandom. So anytime you go and do something like that, it might seem like a small gesture from you, but it means the world to us. So I would love to see you guys go and support her. And make sure you stay tuned for the second part of our double feature with Chris Mayek. You're going to want to check that out to get his take on Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer. That episode should be available now. I'll see you over there. Peace. All original background music used during this episode of Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, was created by Sunspire. To get more of Sunspire, go to sunspire.audio. That's sunspire.audio.
Rainbow Brite, pour un rêve d'enfant, tu existes bien quelque part là-bas. Rainbow Brite, au-delà du temps, tu resteras toujours l'éternel miroir. Rainbow Brite, des jaunes, des rouges et des verts, comme une entaille dans le bleu de l'univers. Rainbow Brite, des jaunes, des rouges et des verts. Rainbow Brite, pour un rêve d'enfant, tu existes
Loading new program. Official co-host. Searching database. Co-host secured. Loading Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. A Halloween Rainbow, the Rainbow Brite special, a double feature event.
Rainbow Brite, see the shining light. The sun gonna take us to Rainbow Brite.
Do you remember when we recorded last?
It was like 3 months ago or something like that.
That's not terrible. I've heard. I was listening to another podcast in there, and I'm listening on their backlog, so I didn't feel the time loop. But they were just like, "Oh yeah, we were just gone for 6 months," and I was like, "Oh, so I mean 3 months, whatever." People, if they listen to my other one, know why. I don't really want to talk about it here, so if they want to, they can go listen to Put a Cherry on It. It's like kind of a bummer story, so we'll just keep this light. But you know why too. But I'm doing a lot better after all of that, so I'm feeling great, and I'm happy to be doing this again. Just we were grieving the loss of a pet short story, and that's kind of, it just sucks the creativity out of you. You know what I mean? Like, I had no drive to do anything like this. I know something new with you is this tattoo. I don't think you had that the last time I saw you, right?
Oh.
That is, it's what?
It's not that old, yeah.
It looks great, and it looks incredible, like high quality, and the colors are really, really bright, even through Zoom. If people want to see, they can check it out on your Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And that's just Chris Mayek, yeah?
Yeah.
And the character is, do you want to talk about it a little?
Yeah, so it's Seliph from Fire Emblem. He looks pretty similar to Marth or Ike if you guys have played Super Smash Brothers, but I got it because his voice actor Christian Lamont was the first interview that I did after I got back home from surviving a car crash that should have killed me, and it was just the first thing that I did to made me come back to reality. And also Seliph's like special ability in Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile game, is Miracle. So it seems there were like multiple reasons why it was fitting to get on me.
That yeah, I read the caption too, where everybody I'm sure is glad you survived.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that experience? Do you feel comfortable talking about it?
Oh yeah, it's fine. It was just, I was coming home from visiting a friend in like rural Wisconsin, kind of late at night, and I just hit. It was in January of 2022, and I just hit.
That's recent in terms of something.
I hit black ice, and I spun out and like went airborne for a few seconds, and then I just had to wait an hour to get pulled out, and then I just drove back home. And fortunately, I was totally fine, and the only major things that were wrong with my car were one of my fog lights falling out and part of the front bumper needing to be pushed back in, but that was it.
I would imagine probably the scariest or the weirdest part would be waiting after, right? Because you don't know how long you're going to be there, and it probably felt like forever. It was cold, yeah. I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like terrible yet. I kept my car on, but yeah, it was weird.
Okay, so your car was still like workable at that time too.
Oh yeah, and then like it's still fine. Like I still use it.
That's still scary though. I'm someone who's never driven anywhere with snow or ice, so I don't even know what it's like. We can hydroplane and stuff, but it's really easy to recover from that. It's not like, you know what I mean? Unless you're in a semi truck. But black ice sounds terrifying. to me because you just can't predict it, right? You can't see it at all.
Yeah, it just blends into the road pretty much.
Yeah. 1 second. Alexa's reminding me about this. Hold on. I hope that wasn't in the background of your story. It was like the timer going off. So we were just talking about this scary moment for you and how you bounced back. How long did it take for you to recover?
Oh, I mean, I was fine once I did that interview, which was 12 hours after I got back home. It was fine.
That's not bad, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I read the caption and I imagined it being like a lot more terrifying, I guess, than that. But I'm sure in the moment, it's one of those things where because you don't know the outcome, it feels huge, right? Like, did you have did it feel like a near-death experience at the time?
Yeah, I guess, because that was the third car accident that I had been in like the past going on 3 years that should have like injured me or damaged my car in some way, and it didn't, and that one was the worst one. So it felt more surreal than the other two did.
That's a lot, actually, in a short amount of time. Do you think that's just like luck, or maybe you need to slow down? I don't know.
Well, the first one wasn't anything to do with like what I was doing. It was because somebody like took all of the bolts off of one of my driver's side tires, and one of my tires blew out while I was on the highway.
Oh my gosh! Why would someone do that? That's crazy.
I know. I know. Like we don't know who it was.
It was just like a random hit.
Yeah, I don't probably. And the second one was similar. It was another winter thing. I was really close to coming home, and then I just it was a similar thing but it was just snow on the road where I spun out, and I was like really close. My car was really close to like hitting the side of a telephone pole, and it stopped like right before it stopped spinning, like right before I hit it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's like a movie.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm having like plans to travel and stuff in the future. And that's one thing I've been really thinking about is how to prepare for environments I've never been in, like snowy, icy places. Do you put chains on your tires, or is that kind of like not a thing people do? You just get special snow tires?
You can do both. It depends on what you want to do and like what kind of car you have. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay for sure. And the tattoo looks amazing. So people should definitely go and check it out. And that is your most recent one, right? But you have some others.
I just have the Haruko that you know about already. Yeah.
Yeah, which both are great. Did the same person do this one?
Yeah.
And who do you want to plug them?
Yeah, her name's Harrow Artistry. Here in Minnesota. She's in Maplewood, Minnesota. In the mall, in Maplewood Mall. That's like a suburb of the Twin Cities.
And they can find her on Instagram, probably.
Yeah, the same username.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad you're back after the break. And today, because it's a holiday, I wanted to do something a little bit different, still tied in with Sailor Moon. So I had you watch an old childhood favorite movie of mine, Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer, which I have to say up front, I recognize that this was a movie designed for children. So without the nostalgia factor, that might have been a little bit funny. I don't really know. Can you just give us your initial reaction to it as someone who didn't watch it as a kid, but who saw it as an adult?
It was fine. I mean, it was interesting I was like mostly watching it like as more from an artistic standpoint. And I know I could kind of tell, even before I looked it up to confirm, that a lot of the animation was done like in Japan for that, because it kind of seems like it was done by people who knew how to do anime. And I know one of the directors was a guy that works that, well, I'm sure he's dead now, maybe, but he was like a legend at Toei Animation, who's the same studio that did Sailor Moon.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that it was a lot of the animation was done in Japan, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels so similar. What else did you notice about it?
I think the main villain and then the human boy Brian were like the only people that looked like normal, like human wise.
That is something that I thought was kind of interesting too, watching it as an adult. I was thinking about it, how there are characters that don't have that sort of strange face, but even though Brian is still a kid, he's older, I guess, than Rainbow's supposed to be. But then there's also, I don't know the details on this, but in the fandom of it, there's some debate on what her actual age really is, because if you watch, you just saw the movie, but if you watch the show, especially like the beginning of Rainbow Land, she comes into this world of darkness and she's kind of being guided by this light because she wanted a place that needed her, whatever, and that's how she found it. And she's not like cognitively a child. Do you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make sense. And then like for some reason in that episode, she like randomly finds a baby that turns out that was the Star of Light, which also might be the sun. It's a little confusing, but it's so people are kind of unclear about what her age really even is, because it seems to me like her and then the Rainbow Land people and, you know, the people in space are kind of like demigods, if you want to compare it to like mythology. And then Brian represents the human, which is why he looks so different, like so normal. And his family, too, is animated to look totally normal. Everything on Earth, like every time they cut back to Earth, even the animals, and it's just a different style of animation. And I think that is a cool detail that is not in Sailor Moon, because Sailor Moon all takes place sort of in the same universe, even when the Negaverse is like messing with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it feels like these are beings that kind of watch over Earth, and it's a separate place from wherever it is that they exist, where it's sort of like eternally spring. I have a list of characters here. I'm sure you probably don't know them all by name, but did any characters stick out to you as being like particularly fun?
Well, I mean, I guess the ones that you see the most, like the main person that's helping her the whole movie is the other, like one of the other two. Aren't there just two like boy people
characters? Brian and then Chris. So Chris is the one with the rainbow power. Yeah,
like it's mostly just him helping her throughout the whole movie. He was cool. I guess one thing I noticed too is that both him and Brian were actually voiced by like teenage boys. Usually I thought they were going to be voiced by women, so that is
usually how it's done, right, for most voiceovers. I didn't know that either. I purposefully don't dig into these kind of details. I know that sounds weird being like a podcast host, but I like learning information directly from other people, and I think that like I want part of the podcast experience to be for people getting to hear that, like me learning. Does that make sense? Because it's like I could go Google it, but then we're all just like swinging around our information dicks, you know, and it's like someone has to be here to learn. See, and I've been a fan of this show since I was like 3, you know, and I just I don't know most of this stuff. I just recently found out that there's a lost episode that they wrote a script for that never happened, you know, and I found that out like yesterday. So you liked Chris? Is he your favorite?
I guess, yeah. I mean, the one at the beginning of the movie that was like all pissed off and wanted it to be like winter all the time. She was fine, I guess.
Stormy, I thought she would be your favorite, honestly.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorites too. And I think with her character design, especially, you can see it's kind of just like, this is the 80s. Like, just, you know what I mean? With the big hair, she straight up looks like she should be singing like at a rock concert somewhere, you know? And very, would you describe her kind of like more rock and roll punk? I'm not good at that kind of stuff, but what's her aesthetic?
I mean, as much, I guess like as much as that movie would
go.
Yeah.
In that direction. Yeah. Comparing to Sailor Moon, she would probably be, her powers are Sailor Jupiter powers, right? But I would think more the color kids are kind of the other Sailor Scouts. So she's almost like a rival villain, but would team up with her if she needed to, you know?
Yeah.
It's who would you draw a parallel to with her if you could?
Well, isn't it not just like thunder and lightning? It's like winter shit too. So I guess it would be. Well, I mean, none of the Sailor Scouts have like ice powers, but I mean, the closest is obviously Neptune and Mercury, but she's like nicer. She's not like they're both nicer than Stormy is. So
she's like a brat kind of.
Yeah,
a little bit. I love that having a character like that to be a rival for a character like Rainbow Brite, who is very much. I love her character, but she's very much just kind of like if you put the epitome of goodness into a little like god baby or.
Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast will return in a moment.
Her sidekick, Twink. First of all, we have to both laugh at the name because anyone who I'm sure by now, if you're not part of the LGBT community, you've heard the word twink before. Could you tell people what a twink is for us?
That's kind of I mean, I would, in that sense, like I normally say that for myself. It's like it's a gay guy who's smaller and thinner and like more feminine potentially, and they lean into that whole realm, and
they would prefer to label themselves that way usually, right? It's not a derogatory thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so for people like who don't know, that's kind of why we're laughing, because it sort of makes sense. I don't know if the term was being used yet in the 80s, you know. It would be interesting for me to look back, but somehow I doubt that that's why he was named that. But somehow it also perfectly fits that Rainbow Brite's sidekick would be a twink. Like, if it was real life, that's probably what would happen, you know, which I think he's funny. As an adult, I find his voice sometimes a lot. But I still think his character is great. If they were going to do a remake of it, I would maybe tone down the voice like a hair.
I think they would definitely do that today. But I think it also helped with the like emo robot horse to like counterbalance everything too.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. What about Starlight?
That was which one was
the horse with the rainbow mane, the most magnificent horse in the universe, self-proclaimed.
Yeah, I mean he was cool. He wasn't like as annoying as I thought he would be, honestly.
That's funny because I could see his character archetype being annoying, but the way that I've never found him annoying either, the way that it's done, because I think even in the episodes, the show does a good job of like, he'll be super confident and like, then he'll charge ahead and like fuck himself up. And then she has to save him. So it's like the whole message is like, it's great to have confidence, but also like pay attention, you know, like maybe don't walk off a cliff. So I kind of love that with his character too. We talked about Stormy already and Chris. Chris in this movie didn't have a big part really. So it would be hard to get a good read on him as a character just from watching this. Onyx the horse, that was the robot horse. How did you? I thought he was cool as a kid. I think he's sort of funny. Like he's sort of like a little bit of comic relief. What's your take on him?
Yeah, because you're kind of led to believe in the movie that he's going to be a villain, and then he ends up like helping everybody. So that was cool, and I like the design and like how they did the special effects for the animation for him.
Like you mean the rockets for how he moves his feet and everything. Yeah. And he has this great moment with pushing the boat to save them, and then he just drops them after. So it's like he gets to, he's a little bit of a mixture of comic relief, but sort of a misdirect in a fun way. Then we get to, you don't see them very much, but just the color kids in general. Like, do you have any impressions on them?
Not really, I guess. Yeah.
I think you would have to see other things to have much. Well, let's talk about the villains a little bit. How about the evil princess?
She was fine. It kind of like in terms of connecting it to Sailor Moon, she sort of reminded me of a more like campy version of a Nehelenia.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. The hair is not as pretty.
No.
It's more like, to me, it looks like a wig.
Yeah.
Which maybe it's supposed to, maybe it is. I don't know. That could be part of her character. Something I actually really enjoyed about her character, though, is the way that she would speak to this diamond like it was a living thing. And then she would put the diamond somewhere and then get mad at it for being where she put it, like, get off my throne. You put it there. So I thought that was, like, even as an adult, for whatever reason, I find that so funny. Because I think it's the message of, like, we all do that sometimes, where we fuck ourselves up and then we're mad at the world, or we're, you know what I mean? And it's like, bitch, you did it. It was you. I knew I was behind this, like, it's very that. So I thought that's a fun thing that they have in here. We talked about the Earth people. How do you feel about the monster designs in the movie?
They're okay. They're like maybe a little bit better than average, just a little bit, but they weren't like, they were kind of in the middle. Yeah,
I would say they're nothing spectacular, somewhat memorable, depending on if, like, certain details might stand out about them to you. But honestly, the only one I ever really remember is, like, the blob monster that turns into fish, because it turns into fish, and that's cool. And, like, everything else, when I rewatch the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that, like, I don't really remember them that much. And then we just there's other stuff we could talk about, but I think, Murky and Lurky. Hello. So these are the villains of the show, for people who don't know. Murky Dismal, his backstory is that, which you see on the television show, when he was a kid, he got in trouble for drawing on the wall with crayons. Like, he loved colors when he was little, and then his mom freaked out at him for it. And that's why he hates colors as an adult now. And his mission is to, like, take all the color out of the world. It's kind of a classic trope, but it's sort of cute that they give him that reasoning. Like, we know why now, and his sidekick, I think, I don't really know exactly where he came from. I think it's just his brother or something. But Lurky is straight up just an idiot. He's there to make kids laugh. Like, they're kind of the Dumb and Dumber of the series, I would say, or whatever. What was your take on them?
I would pretty much say the same thing. I mean, Lurky's kind of really annoying at some points. But it's fine. Like, it's a cute reasoning for, like, wanting to destroy the world. So, which I love that for him, destroying the world would just be taking color away. Like, he's not trying to kill anybody. Like, and his character, it would have to, it's kind of the example of balance. Like, without dark, you don't have light. Like, her existence wouldn't matter if there wasn't, like, someone trying to, do something like that. What did you think about Rainbow Land itself? Like, the aesthetics of it, just in general? I think it was, again, it was, like, more of a artistic and, like, cell animation standpoint. I thought it was pretty good for, like, whatever kind of budget or production they have. I know that the movie was made really fast, so the backgrounds and everything look pretty nice, considering they, like, had so many people working on it. even though it was done really fast.
Do we know why it was done so quickly?
I don't think so. I don't think the Wikipedia like said why.
I would guess because it's the timeline with where this takes place in the show is kind of weird too, because the end of the show takes place like after this, and there's a couple of episodes with characters from the movie at the end of the series. But then there's the beginning of the series, which clearly happens before it. So it's like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Sorry, remind me I just blanked for a second. What were we talking about?
Oh, you would ask me about like how I think the Rainbow World looks and stuff.
Oh yeah. And you were saying how it's more of an artistic take than like the human world. Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of something I see in like the early Pokemon art too, where they would do instead of shadows with like dark and black and gray, they do it with like white and lightning. Does that make sense? They like do their dimensions using lights instead of darks. And I think that kind of adds a magical sparkle to things a little bit. I love that style. Then when they go into the human world, like you said, it's sort of a standard cartoon, shadowed, normal style of animation. Spectra, if we were to compare it to the real world, it's clearly like the sun, right? But in this world, instead of being a giant raging ball of fire that's trying to kill us all, it is a like mirror planet where all light in the universe has to pass through it and then go. It's kind of like a giant prism. What did you think of Spectra in general? The idea of it?
Yeah, that's I think that's one thing that like makes the whole series, I guess, unique in a way. I think without that, it would be a lot more like cookie cutter.
Yeah, because they took the time to flesh out the universe a little more than I think a lot of cartoons do. And it's kind of great that they did, considering it was only 13 episodes in a movie. Like, there isn't a lot of it.
Yeah.
So the fact that they took the time to do that, I think, is great. There's the lost episode also focuses on Spectra, and the whole idea of it was supposed to be that they travel to like the core of Spectra, and then the rainbow belt is not going to need to be charged up like ever again from color crystals or whatever. And then I guess that allows, I don't think they go into this in the episode probably, but that would make it so they don't have to mine the caves anymore, so everyone can like not be, working. I don't know. But that was the lost episode. It also focuses on Spectra, but other than the movie and that, I don't think we see it in the series, so it's kind of a unique chance. The Princess's Dark Castle was another location where it's this kind of tower up on this huge ocean in the center of an ocean, and they have this bridge that can be pulled in and out with spiky doors and stuff. What's your take on her castle and outside, inside, and all that?
Well, I always like, especially in older animation, I always like how more darker or scary or whatever places like that are painted. It always looks really cool, like 90% of the time.
I have to agree, and I think one of my favorite animation shots in the movie is when they go from, they're like, it's the first time you see the castle and they're just showing the ocean, and it's like this mixture of space and ocean. The way they animated that looked so detailed, and like they took a lot of time on it. And I just remember thinking, outside of it being from this movie, if I saw it in Sailor Moon or whatever, I would be like, that's really cool, like whatever this is. I think that they did a great job with the vibes. And for a show that is so cutesy and rainbows, I think it's a very like stark contrast to that. Let's see. That's most of the stuff just from the movie I wanted to touch on. I don't want to do a recap of it. If people want to watch it, they should to see it. You can rent it on Vudu, or it's available. That's it, actually. Do that or buy it online somewhere. I checked earlier. Those are the only places. But we wanted to talk a little bit about how, first of all, the importance of something like this in the 80s. And one of the themes that I saw a lot. I don't know if you picked up on it, but the whole like, I can't believe they sent a girl to help me. I can't believe there was this very strong, like, girls can't do anything vibe coming from Chris. What was your thoughts on that? Because you're younger than me. So I would imagine you didn't experience a lot of that growing up. That was dying off when I was a little kid, but there was still some of it. What did you think of that?
No, I thought that was, obviously, I thought that was a good thing to have that be so powerful of a message and have them working together throughout the whole movie and developing and being more successful as it went on.
Yeah, and it gave them a character building opportunity, because I think if they just initially had gotten along anyway, that would have been boring. This gave her a chance to sort of prove herself to him, even though she didn't really need to. And also, that at the time was a message that they were trying to get into young boys, because they were like trying to combat sexism. That's what it was, you know? And I think when you watch it today, it's easy to, depending on who's watching it, if you're and why you're watching it, I guess you can pick it apart if you want. Like, I recognize there's probably some storytelling issues with it and imperfections, like with everything, but it came out before, I can't remember exactly what the year was. I think you said it was 1984, right? 1985. That's before I was born. Just for some context, I would say Roseanne was probably one of the biggest sitcoms at the time. That would be way before Friends. So I'm trying to give people like a mental reference, you know, of how long ago this was.
Yeah.
Do you think that Sailor Moon was influenced by this at all? Because I think if we follow the timeline, it did originate before Sailor Moon, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, because Sailor Moon, I think, with the first volume was like 1991 or 1990, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't until the 90s. So how much of an influence do you think this had? Can you see any references, maybe?
A little bit. I don't think... I mean, I'm sure that... I know that like later on, Naoko did a bunch of like US research for stuff for the series influence. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she would have seen it before starting it, since one of the directors being from Toei. So, and I think the biggest giveaway is just all the girls representing the different elements. So,
and the different colors. The thing I noticed right away, though, is Rainbow Brite's outfit is a Sailor Scout outfit.
Yeah.
Like, it's tapered in at the center with the same skirt, with the same kind of boots. They're just rainbow boots and they have the 80s like traction thing on the feet instead of being heels, because she's like appears to be, I don't know, 7 and not like 13. And even like with the things on the shoulder, and then like she doesn't have exposed arm, but it's just like, I don't know. And instead of the bow, she has the belt. Like it is basically a magical girl outfit. And a lot of the color kids are designed in a similar way. You didn't get to see them too closely. Something I thought was cool is that they were not all girls, because we did get some male representation in something that knee jerk people see colors and they think girls, which is weird. Like, let's just like think about that for a second. Why are girls why are colors only for ladies? What is that? Did you feel like that growing up? Were you scared to be colorful?
I guess, yeah. I mean, obviously that's not a problem anymore, but as I think like by the time I was in like later high school years, like I didn't really care, but it was more of a big deal when I was like in elementary school, middle school.
This show is something that I think the world right now, in my opinion, could kind of benefit from a little bit, because it feels metaphorically, but also literally, if you just look around at the new cars that are on the road and what color they are, like everything is going gray. Everything feels so dark right now, you know, with just the state of the world in general. And then now, like, I don't know about you because I moved recently. Any place that's been purchased recently by a company, they're refinishing the floors with straight up gray floors, like gray linoleum. And I see it everywhere. And I'm like, why are we slowly just removing the color from everything? And I don't know if I'm just, I want to say this bluntly, too autistic, too weird, too whatever, to where I notice these things and it doesn't really matter. But like, have you ever read the book The Giver?
Yeah, I know what it is.
For people who don't know, it's this book where, like, in the world that you're kind of introduced to, there is no color anymore because it caused all of this chaos and stuff. And then only certain people get to see it, and they're burdened kind of with all of the emotion of the world, right? And they can see, they're the ones who can see the color. And it's like, to me, it feels like we're turning into that gray world a little bit right now. And so in a very like woo-woo, childish, whatever way, I kind of wish people would see this show now and get that message that it has, which is like, it's so basic, but colors literally make people happy. It's like, it's so simple to the point where comedy makes people laugh. Music makes people feel better. Color, like, do you know what I'm saying? No, whatever colors are for you that make you feel better, that's fine, but there is power in that. And if I'm sorry, go ahead and turn your whole house gray, have nothing on the walls, and then see how happy you are. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know. I have to stop. But anyway, what is your take on any of that nonsense?
I guess I kind of agree in some ways. I really like modern style of like architecture and housing, but I also don't like if it's just too overly black or white or gray or whatever. So I can agree like in that kind of aspect, and like obviously political stuff or like stuff that's going on.
Yeah, and this just like, we just had the hurricane come through here, you know?
Yeah.
And that was really stressful for everybody. And a lot of people who evacuated lost their homes. But then you have to remember too, like, for people who live here, you turn on your YouTube, and because you've been watching the weather report after it came through, now it's like all of the aftermath videos are just shoved in your face. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, even though this was like traumatic because I was afraid I was going to lose everything or whatever it was, at least I'm not the lady who watched her friend drown and got sucked under a house in a flood. And it's like all of this stuff, it just inundates your brain, and it's so dark. That's a natural disaster. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let alone what's going on in the rest. Like, I don't want to get specific and political because I think it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. I think we can all agree that like senseless killing is not helpful. Does that make sense? Like, wherever it's happening and why. And that's like as specific as I want to really be. But it's hard for people like me, I think, who are on the spectrum, not to feel that stuff like as an intense weight sometimes, which is why I personally lean into this stuff, like the childish, the anime, the video games, because if I pay attention, I see like absolutely everything, and my brain just processes it so much and so quickly that it's like I get burned out very fast.
Yeah.
I don't know what your personal like mental health world is, and that's your personal information. You don't have to share it if you don't want to, but how do you deal with those types of things when you're confronted with them?
It's a lot better now. Like, I'm feeling better about everything about myself more than I ever have in my life. I guess like whenever I get upset by something significant or in relation to what you were saying, I just kind of lately I just think about the support that I have from strangers, like with the interviews and stuff, and that almost always like brings me back from or makes me feel better from whatever it is. So I just feel like it's like silly to like wallow in a bad feeling now because I have like this big support system that keeps growing. And like doing interviews and stuff always makes me feel better if I'm like supposed to do one on a day where I'm going through something. That's like what I think about now whenever I'm faced with things like that.
And I think that's something that speaks to a lot of people. I can relate to that too, because I'm doing this again because I had been sort of sitting in this depression after losing this pet. And I just casually checked on the stats because I was like, when I stopped too, it's not like we weren't doing good for a brand new show. Like we had enough interest that it wouldn't have made sense to just randomly stop. But when you start comparing numbers, you know what I mean, to like other people and other people's success, and then thinking about how it's such a niche thing and whatever, it can be a little daunting, to say the least. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, we haven't done an episode in how many weeks, and people are still listening now and still finding it now and still downloading it now. And it's actually like way more than I thought would be here. If you were going to take Rainbow Brite and then put it through a modern filter, keeping in mind probably like Sailor Moon exists now and all of that kind of stuff, do you see it working well if they did it as like an aged up magical girl show where the color kids have more interaction and abilities and stuff like that? Maybe they add like attack sequences. I don't know. Although I kind of found it interesting that she didn't have stock footage for her abilities. They were always different. What do you think?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't think it would be as successful considering like it's an American property and like that Sailor Moon is as big as it is now. I just think it would probably get overshadowed.
You think so? How do you think it could possibly make a comeback? Would it have to be more sticking to its own niche and just maybe picking up where it left off, adding more content to it, doing a movie kind of like they did Eternal? What do you think?
Yeah, probably if it was just like a one-off or not, maybe like something like the Eternal movies or something similar like that.
What Crystal, to me, it like, because they did do technically a remake of it before, but it was like an internet only flash animation series in which they turned it very, very low budget, very, very Americanized cartoon. Like the horse look like Starlight, instead of looking like like he did, had like that cartoon horse face where with like the weird gigantic jaw. Do you know what I mean? Where they can talk like a human. And they just like it had no charm to it at all.
Yeah.
I would be worried if they brought it back that they would try something like that again. I think I would only want to see more if they really put the effort in too. All right, let me see. Is there anything else about Rainbow Brite I want to talk about? Not at the moment. I do think it's cool though, because just from posting some of this stuff, I've already found that there's pretty decent crossover with people who do like Rainbow Brite. Most of them are also Sailor Moon fans. I don't think most Sailor Moon fans know about Rainbow Brite. I don't think it goes that way, but it is sort of something that does seem like, if for most part, if you like Sailor Moon and you're looking for something cute that's not long to watch, this might be cute for you. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and if they want to find it, by the way, most of the episodes are on YouTube. Don't use the ones on my channel because they did not turn out like I wanted. But there's a playlist there for higher quality ones if you guys want to watch them. Sunshine Farm Entertainment on YouTube. But yeah, I think that's it for the Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer discussion for today. Do you have anything that you want to tell us? Like, what's been going on with you as far as interviews and stuff go since we talked last?
Pretty much just regularly. It's not any different really. It's just like regularly doing new cast members that are added to the Fire Emblem franchise and the Genshin Impact game. I've been doing cons recently. I'll be doing one again in 2 weeks, Twin Cities Con, the second weekend of November. I'll be hosting a panel there about production art and like cells and stuff for anime.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What's that like hosting? What do you have to do?
I did it like a month ago. It's pretty straightforward. It's just you get like your own panel room, and then you stand at the front, and they provide a projector, and you can just like bring whatever and show whatever and talk about whatever and answer questions. And
so it's whatever. Like a personal presentation and a Q&A kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you get nervous before stuff like that?
No.
Not at all.
No.
So you have no fear of public speaking whatsoever?
I think maybe it would depend on like what it is, but if it's something like that, or if it's like interviewing somebody, especially a voice actor, I don't think I would really get fazed anymore. No. Because
you've done it so much. It's okay. I get what you're saying. It's like if I were to talk to someone about music or whatever, because I've done it so long, I'm really just like, yeah, I can talk to whoever about that.
Yeah.
Something like if I were to have to do like a hosting thing, I've never done it before, that would be a lot more intense for me, because it's like, wait, what? I'm not, these are not my students. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just be like, sit down, Jeremy, or whatever, like, stop, you know what? But I think it's great that you do that. How long do you think it took for you to get totally comfortable with that kind of a thing?
Probably until just like within this, like, as comfortable as I could be with it, probably like just within this past, like the beginning of this year until now.
Yeah. And what do you have coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I have the next con that's in 2 weeks. It's the 11th or the 13th. My panel is on the first night, and then I'm hopefully going to be approved to do in-person interviews with the voice actors that are going to be there, because most of the ones that are going to be there I haven't talked to yet. So
who are they?
It's a lot of big like Funimation people.
Okay.
Like, most of the cast of like the main cast of My Hero Academia will be there.
Oh wow.
The lead, Johnny Young Bach, who's the lead, and like he's Ichigo, he's the lead in Bleach, and like a bunch of other stuff.
Do you still see a lot of the same voice actors from the early 90s and 2000s voicing anime characters today, or is it kind of like a new crop, like a new batch?
There's still a lot of people like Sandy Fox, who is the actually a lot of people that are in the new Sailor Moon dub, like Sandy Fox, who plays Chibiusa. She's been around since the 90s. Michelle Ruff, who plays Luna, same thing. Stephanie Shea, who's been around for like 20 years, who plays Sailor Moon. Like a lot.
So they were bopping around then, just doing other projects.
Yeah, and like Veronica Taylor, who is Setsuna, that's Ash Ketchum. So
I was gonna say I know that name.
Yeah,
I know that name. She was the first Ash, right? Does she do it now? No, she stopped.
No. Yeah, it wasn't her decision. It was like Pokemon USA's decision, like the company that. Yeah,
I think it's because they don't. I don't know. They probably knew if they kept her longer, they would have to start paying her like crazy for voicing such like an iconic character. I don't know that to me, the second his voice changed was kind of, I mean, I was already not really watching it by that point, but you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like you change Jesse and James, and now you're changing him, and I'm kind of like,
everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as fun, which in a way, if you think about it, if Sailor Moon just kept going like Pokemon did, just forever, I think the quality by this point would not be great.
No. Yeah.
Like, I really don't. I think they would have started adding random scouts for no reason. I think they probably would have like changed around voice actors so much that it's like, if you grew up watching it with one Sailor Moon, then it's another one like 7 years later. And then
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think it would be good.
no, I agree.
I'm kind of glad we got the 5, and then they were like, okay, we're going to stop for now. And then
Yeah.
it's getting this renaissance, you know?
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed Moonstar's first holiday special, A Halloween Rainbow. The movie discussed in both parts of this double feature event is called Rainbow Brite and the Star Stealer. We'll be back next time with the next episode of Sailor Moon, Nightmare in Dreamland. Until then, peace.
All original music on this episode was created by Sunspire. For more, visit sunspire.audio.